Well, you're watching Left, Right and Center. He's called a Donald Trump on steroids, a lifetime Republican in the United States who's now the third American of Indian origin to throw in his hat in the race to become President of the United States of America. He's the third Indian American to join the race for the Republican nomination. He follows Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy. Joining us now, a very special guest, Hirsh Singh. Thanks very much, Mr. Singh, for being with us. My first question to you, Democrats have labeled you as being Trump on steroids. How would you respond?
I mean, it's the truth. It's because I've been very strong on many of the policies that matter to Americans today. I've been very strong on medical freedom, which has come under attack since COVID has plagued the world. I've been very strong against big tech censorship, which essentially has shut down all voices that don't come from the left. And I've been very strong in talking about ending the funding for the Ukrainian war, which I believe is devastating stability across this entire world. And I do not want World War III. So Democrats call me Trump on steroids because of my strength, and they're scared of me.
Do you believe, and we'll talk about all the issues that you mentioned, but do you believe that there is a conspiracy against Donald Trump? Do you really believe that line of argument? Many suggest that it's entirely exaggerated.
Anyone who is analyzing the details closely will be able to very clearly tell you that there's a large amount of forces aligned against President Trump because he would have been against the Ukrainian war from ever occurring. And he would have been against the way the censorship and the mandates across this world have occurred. That is accurate to say that there are strong forces aligned against President Trump.
You do idolize Trump, though, right? It's his brand of politics which you want to take forward. That's your goal.
I mean, I consider myself a MAGA conservative. MAGA, Make America Great Again, was not coined by President Trump. It was coined by Ronald Reagan. America First has been a slogan that has been around far before President Trump as well. It's the concept of being proud of your homeland and wanting to protect the citizens.
Let's talk a little bit about a couple of the issues that you mentioned. Ukraine, for example. Now, I've covered the Ukraine war twice on the ground. There are many in Ukraine who believe that it is because of America's assistance that the fight can continue. If there is any effort to actually get out of Ukraine, then there would be problems on the ground. Isn't ceding ground to Russia the last thing that you want?
If you look at American foreign policy, if you revisit Secretary of State under President Nixon, James Baker, they had a policy of wanting to integrate Russia into Europe. Even if you look at President Clinton, when you had his Secretary of State, Warren Christopher, who had a Partnership for Peace program, he wanted Russia to join NATO. It's only since we had Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, when the war hawks essentially took over that part of foreign policy, and we have seen this escalation continue to today. I would say that foreign policy in this direction has been hijacked, and it's not necessarily in the interest of America, the American people, or global stability.
But Russia was the aggressor on this occasion, so in as much as involving Russia into European affairs more might have been a precedent or might have been a requirement in the past, the fact that they attacked changes things quite dramatically.
I think that the fog of war makes it very difficult to easily point fingers. Rarely are there any angels on any side of war. And in this capacity, you have a global economic shift occurring because of the divisiveness of the current conflict. And we do not want World War III. I do not want World War III. And so I would end the Ukrainian war because we do not want what the Democrats want, which is to escalate this to a world war. That is my opinion.
What would happen if the U.S. withdrew from Ukraine?
I think that the conflict would end very soon.
Why would you suggest that? Some would say that if the United States and your allies were to get out of Ukraine, Russia would take over Ukraine effectively very, very soon. Is that what you seek?
I think that Russia will have to make that determination. The whole world is watching what they do. NATO stands prepared to take action if necessary. And I do not see a conflict going beyond Ukraine. I don't think that would be in the best interest of Russia. I don't think Russia wants to antagonize NATO. I don't think Russia would like to further lose its grip on world affairs. they're teetering by a very thin strand, and I do not think it would be in their interest to go 1 inch beyond what has historically been known as Ukraine. So at the moment, whatever's going on, we want peace. I will end the Ukrainian war, and that is one of the most important things that must happen to have global stability.
Mr. Singh, since we are talking about Ukraine, you would be aware of India's foreign policy, where India has essentially balanced our foreign interests. We continue to import Russian oil. In fact, we've expanded the import of Russian oil because it's India first, and we have a huge population. America has a problem with that policy. But how would you sort of look at what India is doing, because we have 1 billion plus and we need to meet our energy requirements, which are huge?
I think that U.S. India relations is a key part of global trade and global stability moving forward. I think currently about 40% of global trade goes through the South China Sea, and to counter and to ensure that you have open and free trade, U.S. India relations and other partnerships such as the Quad, working with Japan and Australia, I think are key to future trade, as well as keys to an expansion of positive relations across all spectrums. And so I see that there is an advantage to India to maintain very strong and persisting and greater relations moving forward. Even recently, I believe India signed the Artemis Accords, yes, where you're going to have further positive relations expected between U.S., India, West, Japan, and the others.
Do you believe that the basis of the strategic relationship between India and the United States is China and concerns that both nations share?
I don't believe it is only China. I think it is multilateral across many of the hemispheres in the world. I think that China currently has been posturing itself in a very dangerous way to have that global trade and security. And in that capacity, it makes interests between the U.S. and America with Indian interests really much more aligned. But I do feel that the advantage not only from the security and global trade side, but also expanding economic relations, is a very big positive.
If you became president of the United States, what would you do for India-U.S. relations?
In a U.S.-India, underneath my administration, I think it would be very clear that the positive aspects of gaining further economic relations with India would be realized. I think one of my main focuses is to bring core manufacturing home. We saw during COVID how due to too many economic eggs being in certain parts of the global community, we had certain types of limitations on what were available. I think having a more diverse approach to manufacturing, making sure core manufacturing returns to the homeland here in America, would be beneficial not only for the U.S., but also for the globe at large. I see India as being one of the keys of ensuring global stability. And I think that if there was no Ukrainian war, once that is concluded under our administration, then peace and prosperity would be able to really start expanding across the entire globe.
You spoke about the importance, in your view, of core manufacturing returning to the United States. There are many, for example, in India who are looking for India to be a manufacturing giant in several areas. You focus a lot on tech. India is very keen on that as well. We've seen a lot of sales of Apple come to India, manufacture of Apple products come to India from China. Do you think that that could be a future area of disagreement between your vision of America becoming or dominating the manufacturing space and countries like India, which have our own aspirations?
Not at all. I think that America can take care of core interests at home, and at the same time, there's plenty of opportunity across the spectrum. In the end, when you have economic relations between two large organizations that have very different populations, it's a win-win. The whole concept of having trade relations is that both sides win. I see the need for stability in the areas for both economic growth and trade, and with the stability that we're seeing internationally, India would be a logical place where those values, which are consistent among both nations, would be a positive way for relations to increase and improve mutually.
Mr. Singh, you're unvaccinated for COVID, is that right?
Yes, that is correct. I'm the only candidate for president who is unvaccinated.
How would you respond to those that say that that sets a pretty poor example, considering that millions have lost their lives in America and elsewhere to COVID?
I think that the exact opposite is true. We're seeing more and more proof of harmful impacts and effects for those that decided to follow the propaganda, which was pushing for things that were experimental and untested. I think that, if anything, it's very concerning to see the number of people that have died at young ages. There seems to be a lot of issues with regarding that plague. And if you look at other countries that did not fall for the lockdowns and the such as Sweden, they did very well. They did not have the same type of issues. So I'm very disturbed that, something like science, which is always under constant debate with opinions that change over time, would ever come out as strongly and mandate things the way they did. I'm for America. I'm for America first, but I'm for medical freedom, medical liberty, if you will, and medical care should be based upon a relationship between a doctor and a patient, not bureaucrats. Things like ivermectin, which are now allowed to be used for treatment today, went out of vogue with the bureaucrats and those in power. And that was an abuse which is unacceptable and should never be allowed to happen again. Under my administration, we will set the foundation to stop anything like that from ever occurring again.
There is overwhelming statistical information to suggest that without vaccines, the number of people who would have died in the Delta wave would have been much more. Those who contracted the disease once they were vaccinated during Delta and after had far milder symptoms. So there is evidence to suggest that the drug saved countless lives.
I think that there is a phrase out there which is nothing can be worse than statistics when it comes to telling the truth. In general, I feel that there are a lot of anecdotal aspects which contradict. There are scientific papers coming out today showing other concerns. I do not believe that you need to be against all of science while being very skeptical about technology, which is experimental and has shown many detrimental impacts.
Each of the drugs that you refer to as being experimental have in fact been cleared by the World Health Organization.
It's very disturbing that that is the case, because what we're seeing now, months after they have been released and years after the actual COVID disaster, show that those that were skeptical of taking the experimental medication were probably better off.
Really better off? How so?
I think that people that contracted COVID and recovered naturally have much stronger resistance to COVID-19. That is fully established and considered fact now. Those that took different vaccinations that were experimental have had health concerns, myocarditis and others. I'm not a doctor, but I'll tell you that these issues are pervasive. And we're seeing more and more of it today. I believe it's more of a tragedy against humanity that the youth which took this are having medical episodes across America and in many other places as well. And it's very unfortunate that the big tech censorship is what allowed the concerns to not be addressed. It stopped the ability for neighbors to discuss the situations that they were seeing on their own. And, the whole concept of science is for open discourse and at times very strong argument about what's going on. Science changes over time. And those that said it was safe and secure to take the experimental vaccination have basically been proven wrong with some of the issues that we are seeing, especially here in the U.S.
No, we see issues all over the world. It's called long COVID. Nobody knows what the lasting impact of COVID is, but that isn't directly linked to the vaccines. How do you assume that?
I'm pretty confident that as more and more data comes out, we will have a clear trajectory that those that did not take it were in a better position, and those that took it have had side effects which are very, very unfortunate.
All right, we'll see what that data has to show. But you've taken a position on tech censorship. What is that position, and why have you taken it?
During the COVID episode, anyone who spoke up from a position that was outside of what is considered the political left were essentially silenced. And those that consider themselves across the entire world internationally tend to be puppeted by the same American left, which provides almost talking points of what is considered to be accepted speech. It's very unfortunate that it had to get this bad before people started understanding the values of the traditional aspects of liberty, freedom of speech, which had been tenets of what America has been. And so we must make sure that the laws in America, for example, Section 230, which allow for these type of big corporations to behave like publishers but not get treated as such, are corrected and made it so that people are not censored again. Free expression is one of the base foundations of America, and that must be protected.
I'm just trying to understand, did you just suggest to me that those on the left side or the left wing of the political divide were those who pushed for vaccines, whereas those who were more right-wing didn't? Is that what you're suggesting?
That is a clear dichotomy
But
here in the US.
But that's not true now, is it? There are so many governments around the world which have right-wing governments. For example, here in India, we've got a right-of-center government which pushed vaccines relentlessly and believed that they've saved countless lives. There'd be other governments around the world as well which have done the same. And they are not left leading.
People have the right to believe what they would like to. At the same time, the indications are very clear that most people in power were pushed by their bureaucratic processes to find a solution when there was so much confusion. And once you take a position, people want to ensure that those positions are the right ones historically. That doesn't mean that that's always the case. And just because you may have certain people in power that believe something at a certain point in time, when more data presents itself as it is presenting itself now, those that were skeptical were definitely on the right side of this. It's very unfortunate what has happened. And those that helped create the marching orders for the vaccines and the experimental medicines that were used, while things like ivermectin were not allowed to be used and prescribed, must be fully analyzed and held under the law.
Well, there were mistakes, no doubt. But anyhow, let's just move away from COVID and the medication, because I think there's a great deal of interest in your own story. And I think there's a great deal of interest in the expanding role of the diaspora in the United States. Do you believe that America is ready to see a U.S. president with an Indian origin?
I don't think it bothers anyone in America. I think that the fundamental concerns for the American population are, do you have the strong leadership capability to ensure that you're not going to bend knee to crony capitalism or things that will actually limit the rights of Americans? And will you help shepherd the country in a good direction that helps all populations move in the right direction? America is on the right, not racist at all. On the political right, America is most focused on those that have strong character, that have conviction, and that have the right values. And because of that, though it might be a matter of pride for India, it's actually a matter of pride in America to show that even you can come from any background, but if you have the right values, that you'll be fully accepted and integrated into this country.
Absolutely. That's one of the strongest sort of aspects of America, which defines your democracy. But tell us a little bit about yourself. Do you have strong roots back in India even now?
Yeah, both my grandparents were members of both Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha. I think even before that, my great-grandfather, Colonel Girdhari Singh, was known as the Lion of Italy. He was underneath General Montgomery when they liberated North Africa from General Rommel, the German General Rommel in North Africa. And then I think they helped remove the Nazis from the east coast of Italy when the Americans were on the west coast. So I have, if you go further back, I think there's even more, both military, political, or otherwise. It's definitely in my family. It's in me. There's no way I couldn't be involved. I care about public service to the core. I care about doing things the right way. And I'm blessed to be able to try and serve society, because that's the highest calling that could be. And if you can do that well, everyone wins.
A final question to you, and this isn't just restricted to your politics or your party, but the growing role of the diaspora in the United States, not just industry, but also in politics. What does it say about the community?
Well, the Indian American community is a very genuine and authentic community. We focus on very strong family values. We believe in education is superior to almost anything, that knowledge is the goal, and that with these fundamental values, we integrate very well in almost any part of the world. Here in America, the Indian American community have become industry leaders in every sector, whether it's the legal side, the technology side, whether it's the medical side, whether it's just entrepreneurial. There's a joke that America runs on Dunkin', and I would say the Indian American community owns more Dunkin' Donuts than any other. In effect, America runs on Indian Americans. You could say that more than 50% of the hotels in America are owned by the Indian American community. So though we are a minority by far, only a couple million at most, we are very proud to be American. We're very genuine in our hard work. And whenever there's a company that might be going through difficult stripes, they tend to hire lots of Indian Americans to try and turn the trajectory around. In that same capacity, the place where the Indian Americans have had the least amount of presence has been in the political sphere, right, especially completely almost alien from the political right. We need a balance. We need people that are happy and proud to be American, but also bring the values that our community has into the fold. It's a win-win for not only America, but the entire world when America is going in the right direction and rising.
All right, Hirsh Singh, thank you very much for speaking to us. You've got a long campaign ahead, and we wish you the very best of luck. Thank you very much indeed.